Sorry. Hi, everybody. So I wanted to give some exciting news. We had done this class less than a year ago in honor that my cousin finds a shidduch, and we said within less than a year. And she just got engaged last week. That's like it's a really big deal in our family. Like we've been waiting.
It's the most beautiful thing that happened.
So it's very exciting. So we're gonna do a class in honor of her sister, Adina Tova Rasha Rezel, and also my boss, Yitzchak Ben Libby,
for Refuah Shlema,
and that he has less and less pain and starts getting better.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
And anyone else who needs a shidduch.
Yeah.
And your sister? Yeah.
My sister.
How exciting is that news?
It was so exciting, and we said, my aunt's already like inviting me to everything, and
I'm there. I always say, if it happens because of us, I'm there. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, Be'ezat Hashem. Shavua Tov. I must say, this is a chidush. We have to make a shechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. This is the first time that we're meeting on Motzei Shabbat in the winter season, and I'm so happy because we are blessed here with Malava Malka, and I get to see you on a Motzei, which is nice. So thank you all for coming out. I know it's not always easy right after Shabbat to take care of things and quickly come out, but thank you so much for coming, and you should be blessed. Hashem should give you bracha v'atzlacha. This week's parasha was quite a dramatic one. From the onset, we read about the confrontation between Yosef HaTzadik alav shalom and Yehuda ben Yaakov alav shalom. And our hearts are aroused with emotion when Yosef finally reveals himself to the brothers with his famous words, Ani Yosef ha'od avi chai. I am Yosef, is my father still alive? And Chachamim say that these words are probably one of the most dramatic words in the entire Torah HaKadosha. And if, it's okay. Yosef, Yosef, Yosef. He's Od Avichai, he's Od Chai. And if this episode isn't dramatic enough, we also read about Yaakov Avinu's alav shalom reunion with Yosef, who we didn't see for 22 years. So the last few parshiot that lead up to this climax are very difficult to understand. Mefarshim struggle to make sense of what the Shvatim were thinking when they sold Yosef. What was Yosef feeling when he was sold? Why did it have to happen this way? There are many questions as well as rabbinic approaches to this subject, but Chachamim tell us that this episode is more difficult to understand than a piece of Gemara or a section of the Zohar HaKadosh. You hear that? So today we'll Be'ezat Hashem discuss some of the opinions so we can get a clearer picture. The Pasuk says, Vayagidu lo lemor. The Shvatim tell Yaakov, Od Yosef chai. Abba, Yosef is still alive. V'chi hu moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. And not only that, but he's now the leader over the entire land of Egypt. What is Yaakov Avinu's reaction after hearing the good news that the son who he was separated from for all those years is actually alive and well and the ruler of the largest empire in the world? It's a dream come true. Od Yosef chai. How does Yaakov Avinu react? The Pasuk says, Vayafag libo ki lo ha'emin lahem. His heart stood still. He was in doubt. He was startled. He was taken aback because he didn't believe them. And then the Pasuk says, Vaydabu elav et kol divrei Yosef. They began explaining the details of Yosef's words. And then we're told וירא את העגלות אשר שלח יוסף לשאת אותו. Yaakov then sees the wagons that Yosef sent in order to take him to Egypt. And at that point, Yaakov Avinu's spirits are revived. And he says, Rav, great. Od Yosef beni chai. My son Yosef is still alive. The question is obvious. Why didn't he believe the Shvatim at first? Did he think that they are lying to him? I mean, this would be a very bad joke to play on their father if it wasn't true, no? No? After all the pain they caused him by bringing him the bad news of Yosef 22 years ago, he could be sure that if they're telling him Yosef is alive, it's true. It's true. So what's the meaning of the words, Ki lo ha'emin lahem? He didn't believe them. And then suddenly, after they give him a few details, Yaakov changes his mind and he says, oh, great, my son is still alive. What's really going on over here? I just want you to know that I'm going to give you a few introductions and some questions, and then as we build up, we're going to answer all those questions and we're going to get to the climax. There's another question that all the Mefarshim struggle with. How come Yosef never sent a message to his father informing him that he was alive? The distance between Mitzrayim and Eretz Yisrael is not so far. And let's not forget that Yosef was the viceroy of Egypt and he had every available means at his disposal. He could have sent a message that would have saved his father a lot of grief. Why didn't Yosef do that? There are many opinions among the Rishonim concerning this issue. Rashi HaKadosh alav hashalom explains that there was a cherem placed after Mechirat Yosef. It seems that the Shvatim, in a legalized Bet Din, decided that nobody should tell Yaakov what happened with Yosef. Anybody who broke this pact would be cursed. Yosef was there when the cherem was placed, and because he's respected his brother's Bet Din, he didn't want to break the pact that his brothers made. Now, ladies, that's very hard for us to imagine. Can we believe that Yosef was bound to a pact that his brothers made when they were the ones who sold him into slavery? Why should he care about the pact that they made? And why should he help them create another wrongdoing by lying to their father? So perhaps one answer could be that Yosef must have understood the greatness of his brothers and that they were not simple people. He felt that if the Shvatim made a cherem, even if they were wrong, then that pact has to be upheld. Therefore, he didn't want to break it, and he was willing to suffer the consequences of that pact. That's one opinion. The Ramban alav hashalom has a completely different understanding of this episode. He says that Yosef's dreams, if you remember, he had some dreams, they had a status of prophecy. And that's the reason why they needed to be told over to the Shvatim. Now, that raises the question of, well, I understand that, but why would Yosef share his dreams with the brothers if he knew they hated him and it would upset them? He was telling them, oh, my dream that I had means you're going to bow down to me, and our father is also going to bow down to me. That causes a conflict between the brothers and Yosef, where they're like, who do you think you are? What do you think you're going to rule over us? So why does Yosef have to share his dreams if he knows it's not going to bring peace between him and the brothers or make them happy? Not only that, but the Zohar Kadosh says that he actually had to beg them to listen to his interpretation of the dreams. Chachamim say that the halacha says that when a Navi receives a prophecy, he's required to express it. As uncomfortable as it is for Yosef to share the dreams, he also knows that it's a nevu'ah that's required to be shared. So according to the Ramban, Yosef didn't want to do anything that's going to interfere with the prophecy coming true. The brothers had to bow down to him. So if Yosef would send a message to his father, it could have thrown the dreams off course. Therefore, he had to wait for his dreams to come to fruition instead of throwing a wrench into the dreams, which would then cause the prophecies to become interrupted. That's one of the reasons he never sent a message to his father, because it meant that it may change the course of events. That's the Ramban's opinion. He's so cute. The dad is adorable. The dad Zekenim and Baalei Tosafot have a different approach. Aleim Shalom. They say, if Yosef would have sent a letter to his father, Yaakov would have found out the entire story, and the Shvatim would have been petrified from their father's curse, and they would have all run away. And as a result, this would have caused a dispersal of the Shvatim. The Shvatim would now be all over the world, and as a result, Am Yisrael would be split up, and who knows if they would ever get back together again. It would have broken up the entire family. So Yosef didn't want to be responsible for breaking up the family. The Baalei Tosafot adds that when Yaakov finally came down to Mitzrayim, Yosef made sure that he never spent private time with his father. Why? Because he didn't want Yaakov Avinu to ask the $1 million question, which was, tell me, Yosef, what really happened to you? What happened? Because then Yosef would be obligated to explain it, and it would have caused the great machloket. Therefore, Yosef always made sure that he should never be alone with his father, so that the question would never be asked. Now that's an amazing concept if you think about it. First of all, it's amazing that Yaakov Avinu had such self-control not to ask. Parents ask questions. Yaakov didn't ask. He never found out the real story of Yosef and the brothers, and it's an amazing midah on Yaakov Avinu's part to hold himself back from asking the question when he realizes that Yosef is avoiding the details. He just doesn't want to talk about it. He chaps, he says, okay, I'm not asking. That's a tremendous midah. But despite the various opinions of the Chachamim, we say, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim. All of the opinions are emet. There's another question that has to be asked, very interesting. Yitzchak Avinu, alav shalom, knew that Yosef was alive. How do we know that? Because the pasuk says, Vayefk oto aviv. Yaakov's father was crying. Why was he crying? Rashi HaKadosh says, Yitzchak boche mipnei tzarato shel Yaakov. Yitzchak was crying because his son Yaakov was in a great deal of pain over the loss of Yosef, so he cried. But the end of that Rashi says, Aval lo mitabel shehaya yodea shehu chai. But Yitzchak was not mourning because he knew that Yosef was still alive. If Yitzchak knew that Yosef was still alive, why didn't he tell his son Yaakov? Yitzchak wasn't part of that cherem that we spoke about. He could have told Yaakov the good news. How come he didn't? Ladies, today we're going to uncover what I call a blockbuster chidush. Blockbuster. Yaakov Avinu refuses to be consoled, and he mourns for 22 years. From here, the Gemara teaches us a general rule concerning avelut, lo alenu. We're told that usually, after a year of mourning, the mourner begins to basically forget, and the pain slowly begins to subside. The Gemara tells us that this is a bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestows upon man, that he's able to recover after a devastating loss. There are people who deal with the loss of a loved one in an inconsolable way. They say things like, I'll never be happy again. I don't want to live without that person. I won't be able to enjoy life again. And they mean what they say. But the Gemara tells us that after a year, most people generally do go back to regular life. This is a bracha in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the mourner some form of nechama, some form of consolation. So now imagine this, ladies. Yaakov Avinu, after 22 years where he's unable to be consoled, he's not able to be consoled. And the Gemara asks, you know why Yaakov couldn't be consoled? Because Yosef was still alive. The bracha only takes effect when the person is deceased. But if he's alive, it doesn't work. So ask yourself this question. Yaakov knows this rule. He should have realized that if he's still mourning the same after a year, after 2 years, after 3 years, something strange is going on. He should have realized that Yosef is still alive. The biggest proof that Yosef is still alive was the fact that Yaakov Avinu wasn't feeling consoled after all that time. Similarly, the pasuk says, Kol hamit'abel al Yerushalayim zoche lirot besimchata. Anyone who mourns over Yerushalayim merits to see its rejoicing. One of the Rishonim asks, what does it mean that someone who mourns for Yerushalayim merits to see the rejoicing? Zoche lirot. The pasuk should have said, Yiskeh lirot. He'll merit to see, meaning in the future, when Mashiach comes. Why is the Lashon that's used here in the present, Zoche lirot besimchata? It's as if one who mourns for Yerushalayim is experiencing the joy today, right now, Zoche. Even before it's built, Zoche, now in the present. Her answer is, the fact that we're mourning over Yerushalayim for 2,000 years already after its destruction is the greatest indication that Yerushalayim is still very much alive. Because if Yerushalayim was dead and there was no hope for Yerushalayim, if Yerushalayim had no tikvah, we would have forgotten about her after a year. We wouldn't be sitting on the floor on Tisha B'Av mourning and fasting, v'mitablim. So the greatest consolation and simcha is that the feeling is in the present. Zoche, because that means Yerushalayim is not extinct. And we got that confirmation from President Trump last week. Yerushalayim is very much alive. It's the same with Yaakov. After the first year when he couldn't be consoled, that should have been an indication of life. It should have been a siman tov that Yosef was still alive. So the blockbuster chidush that we're going to learn today was told over by Rav Breuer, alav shalom. He said that if Yaakov knew that Yosef was alive, that's precisely what caused him so much pain. That's what frightened him. Because if Yosef is indeed alive, it means that he's somewhere out there in the world all alone. He's somewhere in the foreign world without any Jewish people around him. Don't forget that most of the Jews were situated around Yaakov Avinu. That means that wherever Yosef is, he must be estranged from Yahadut. He must be distant from his Jewish purpose in life. And to Yaakov Avinu, this was more painful than death itself. Why? Because if Yosef dies at age 17 from some tragic accident, lo alenu, then at least he dies a Jew worthy of entering Gan Eden. But Yaakov's concern was that Yosef was still alive, and the concern is confirmed by his excessive mourning. And Yaakov is afraid that if his son was still alive, it could very well be that he assimilated. And that kind of pain was too much to bear. And for Yaakov Avinu, it was an inconsolable pain. Because let's not forget that Yosef was in a land of complete and utter degradation. Yosef was in Mitzrayim, in the Rosh HaKlipa. There were no minyanim over there. There was no shul or bet midrash. There were no shiurim. There wasn't a single Jew in Mitzrayim. Yosef doesn't have one friend or family member. He doesn't have one person who could encourage him or provide him with chizuk. He's surrounded by a stream of Ovdei Avodah Zarah who are engaging in all sorts of perversions, and Yosef is all alone. So Yaakov thought in such a place would surely be affected. Think about it. It would be very difficult for a young man at the age of 17 for a period of 22 years to live in an environment that's encapsulated with tumah and not be affected by it. It's a matter of time before a Jew begins to lose his way. It's only normal. People tend to become influenced by the society that they're surrounded by. This is life. This is the nature of things. Therefore, Yaakov Avinu's concern was that Yosef was still alive, and that's what worried him, and that's what pained him. Because if he's alive, it must mean that he must be completely estranged from Yahadut. Why is this a chidush? Why is this the blockbuster chidush? Because we usually learn that Yaakov was concerned that his son was dead, not the opposite. Nachon? So with this thought in mind, we can now attempt to understand why Yitzchak Avinu didn't inform Yaakov that Yosef was still alive. You see, by telling him is only going to make matters worse. It would pain Yaakov even more. Yaakov would have preferred that Yosef be dead, but at least have a chelek in olam haba, than knowing that he's maybe living as a goy somewhere and potentially losing his share in the world to come. You understand? Rav Shimshon Rafal Hirsch, alav shalom, adds, perhaps this is the reason why Yosef also never sent a message to his father. What is he going to say? Dear Dad, don't worry, I'm alive. Oh, Yaakov would now begin to wonder, you're alive? In what way are you alive? Because don't forget, the halacha says that when someone is niftar, lo alenu, we sit shiva for 7 days. But when someone is estranged from Yahadut, some opinions say that we have to sit shiva for 14 days. If God forbid a boy marries a goya, you have to sit shiva for 14 days. Or if someone decides to convert to some other religion, you have to sit shiva. So, why? Why do we have to sit shiva? Because that person loses his chelek in olam haba. For that you have to mourn. So what message could Yosef have possibly sent from Egypt? What should he have sent? A letter stamped with his viceroy signet ring? A postcard? What is he going to send? How would that calm Yaakov's spirits? I mean, if Yosef would send a letter stating that he's still religious, that I could understand. But even then, Yaakov would wonder if that's really true, because it's impossible for a person to remain in such an environment and not be influenced. Yosef therefore decided that there's nothing to gain by informing his father of his existence. On the contrary, he'd only cause his father more distress. So he chooses to remain silent until the day he meets his father face to face. Why then? Because then his father could see with his own eyes that he remained true to his convictions and that he didn't veer off from the proper path. Yaakov's concern was that his son became assimilated and was cut off from his Jewish roots. And every year that went by that he couldn't feel consoled, he experienced a deeper pain. In other words, every year that went by, Yaakov felt more and more that his son was alive. So the more he's alive, the more dead he must be. The more he must be living a life devoid of ruchaniut. And we know that a Jew without Torah is not alive because he's unplugged from the source of all blessings. Let's try to understand another point. In last week's parasha, Yosef placed his royal goblet in Benjamin's sack. And And there's an entire charade that's orchestrated where Benjamin is accused of stealing the goblet, and now his fate is a lifelong prison sentence in Mitzrayim. And that leads us up to this week's parasha, where Yehuda immediately steps forward on behalf of Benjamin. Vayigash elav Yehuda. There's a confrontation between two huge leaders, where Yehuda, it's very interesting, there are secrets about their confrontation, because we've got the two founders, we'll say, of the Messianic movement, because we've got Yehuda, which is Mashiach ben David, and then we've got Yosef. The lineage of Yosef is Mashiach ben Yosef. Those two are confronted in this week. So we see the struggle between these two Mashiachnit, so to speak. But anyway, where Yehuda confronts Yosef, and he says, if we come back home without Benjamin, our father will die, because he's already lost one son. If he loses another son, he's going to for sure die. We can't let Benjamin stay here, sorry. The Mefarshim ask an obvious question. Why would it kill Yaakov? Yehuda would go home. Yaakov would ask, where's Benjamin? Yehuda would say, Abba, don't worry, he's still alive. It's just that he stole the goblet of the king, and he may have to spend the rest of his life in prison, but don't worry, we're now in the middle of negotiating his release. Al da'aga. Don't worry. So I don't understand what Yehuda is telling Yosef. What does he mean when he says, our father's going to die from this? The Malbi Malav Shalom says that once Yaakov would have seen that Benjamin isn't there, it would have been a deja vu all over again. He would have died on the spot. That's number one. Not only that, but the Malbim says, if Yehuda would tell Yaakov, Dad, don't worry, he's alive, but it's just that he stole the goblet, that would for sure kill Yaakov, because he would think, what? He was in Egypt for 3 days and already he became a thief? Benjamin is one of the few men that died without ever doing a chet, without ever sinning. He was a tzaddik gamur. So the last thing Yaakov wants to hear is that Benjamin was accused of thievery, because what kind of confirmation would that give Yaakov? What kind of confirmation?
That Benjamin couldn't last 3 days. Where's Yosef?
Very good. That if Benjamin, after being in Egypt for a few days, turned into a thief, Yosef is for sure a goner. So Yaakov would die twice. Telling Yaakov the truth was not an option. And we see from here that what concerned Yaakov more than anything else was the spiritual well-being of his children. So, with that whole introduction in mind, I am now going to tell you what I came here to tell you. Perhaps now... No, I'm good. Perhaps now we could understand a very important terminology, and that's what I came to teach you today. When the Shvatim informed their father that, Od Yosef Chai, what was the message they were trying to impart to him? Chachamim say the word Chai, in the terminology of the Torah, means spiritually alive. It doesn't mean physically alive. Chai means spiritually living. Now, according to what we're saying here today, Yaakov always suspected that Yosef was alive. So if the Shvatim tell their father, guess what? Yosef is still alive. Chazak u'baruch. Very nice. That's not a chidush for Yaakov. Yaakov knows Yosef is still alive, and that's one of the things he's concerned about. If anything, that's bad news for Yaakov. But the Shvatim came back very excited. And they said, Abba, the good news is that Yosef is still chai. He's still living according to what the Torah deems to be true living. He's spiritually alive and religious. Yaakov can't believe such a thing. Ki lo ha'amin lahem. He didn't believe it. And rightfully so, because Yaakov Avinu, he himself knows what it means to be outside the fold, because he lived in Lavan's house for over 20 years, and it was a miracle that he came out wholesome and pure. As a matter of fact, when he left Lavan's house, he sent a message to his brother Esav, if you remember, Im Lavan garti. By the way, I lived with Lavan, and Rashi says, oh, and by the way, that means v'taryag mitzvot shamarti. I lived with Lavan, and I managed to keep all the mitzvot. That's a big chidush, ladies. Because Rashi tells us that Esav is shocked by these words because he can't believe it. You lived with Lavan for 20 years and you still shomer Torah and mitzvot. Mefarshim tell us that that's one of the reasons why Esav never pursued Yaakov all those years to kill him. Because think about it, Esav was like the godfather of the Italian mafia. He's like Michael Corleone. You know who Michael Corleone is? Right? He's the godfather. He could have located Yaakov within days, or put a hit on him, and killed him in Lavan's house. Why didn't he do it? Rashi says because he thought to himself that the best place Yaakov could be was in Lavan's house, because he'd be influenced there and he's going to become spiritually dead. And becoming spiritually dead is one of the worst things that can happen to a person. So what's the point of chasing after him and killing him physically? He's going to die anyway, מבחינת רוחנית. So ladies, Yaakov Avinu knew what it was like to live in a corrupt environment. And the only thing that protected him from that corrupt environment was 77 years of learning Torah before he reached Laban's house. 63 years of learning Torah from his father Yitzchak, and 14 years of learning Torah in the yeshiva of Shem Va'ever. So by the time Yaakov reached Laban's house, he was very much insulated. In Yaakov's case, he had 77 years of learning. That has to count for something, no? He wasn't a 17-year-old young teenager when he reached Laban's house. He wasn't a young boy. And let's not forget that Yaakov had two wives who were tzaddikot, who helped him. It's not like Yosef, who was a bachelor in a foreign country, alone, with nobody. Therefore, Yaakov thought it's virtually impossible to survive spiritually in such a situation. But the brothers come along and they say, no, Abba, he's very much high and spiritually kicking. Yaakov can't believe it. So what happens? The next pasuk says, Vayedabru elav et kol divrei Yosef. They told him all the words of Yosef. And one of the things Yosef told them to tell their father was, Samani Elokim la'adon al kol Mitzrayim. Hashem placed me as a ruler over the entire land of Egypt. And the Mefarshim explained that Yosef told his brothers to tell their father how he publicized the Kadosh Baruch Hu throughout all the land of Egypt. We see that not only did Yosef HaTzadik remain true to Yahadut in a land devoid of spirituality, but he publicized Hashem and made people aware of him in that land. Because when Yosef was in prison and the butler and the baker had dreams and they wanted Yosef to interpret those dreams, what does he tell them? He says, God will interpret your dreams. God? Who's God? They don't know who God was. When he was summoned before Paro to interpret his dreams, he says, Elokim ya'aneh et shlom Paro. God is going to interpret your dreams, Paro. Bear in mind that Yosef was talking to a man that he himself thought was God. Paro worshipped himself. He thought he's a deity. But in the most distinguished and honorable way, Yosef informs Paro, you're not God. There's a God. He's going to interpret your dreams. There's an omnipotent being that's going to give the answers, Ata lo Elokim, in a very nice way. But not only that, Yosef gave his sons a Brit Milah. He wasn't at all embarrassed to be a Jew or afraid to speak about Hashem like in our generation. Talk to the people today about God. Oh, no, what do I hear? B'vakasha, I can't. No spirituality, I'm not so deep, I'm not so this. Mazeh. He was making Kiddushei Hashem in a land that was the epitome of Tumah. We should learn from this. Not to be afraid to make Kiddushei Hashem. And Yaakov is hearing all of this from the Shvatim and he's amazed. And after that, the Pasuk says, Vayar et ha'agalot. Yaakov sees the wagons that Yosef sent. What was the significance of those wagons? Yaakov is a chacham. Agalot sounds like the word egla, which means a calf. Agalot, egla. Yaakov knew that Yosef was sending him a subtle message. You see, on the day that Yaakov sent Yosef to check on the brothers all those years ago, Yaakov and Yosef were learning Masechet Sotah, the Gemara of Sotah, specifically the subject of the Egla Arufa. Literally, that means a decapitated calf. But it actually refers to a case where a corpse is found in a field and you can't find the murderer. You don't know who killed that person. So Yosef sends his father Agalot as a siman that he still remembers the learning that he did all those years ago with his father. Yaakov picks up on the connection of the words, and after he sees the Agalot, the Pasuk says, Vatechi ruach Yaakov, all of a sudden his spirit became revived, and he began to believe, and he says, Rav, great, oh, Yosef beni chai, my son Yosef is still alive, he's still spiritually kicking. Although he's still a bit skeptical because he says, Elecha ver'enu, I have to go see this. I have to see with my own eyes before I die, because this is something extraordinary. To go against the culture and still remain true to your faith. And Rav Breuer says something fascinating about this point. He asks, why was Yaakov so excited that Yosef remembered the subject of the Egla Arufa? Big deal. So if Yosef remembered what he learned with his father 22 years ago, that's something to get all excited about. It proves something. All it proves is that Yosef had a good memory. What are you getting all excited about? Says Rav Breuer. What's the halacha of Egla Arufa? What do you do when you find a corpse in the middle of the field in Jewish halacha, and you can't find, you find a dead man, and it's between two cities, and you can't locate the murderer, and even though you're searching and searching, you can't find the murderer. What do? We take out a measuring stick, and we measure which city is closest to the dead body. Then the residents of that city that are closest to the dead body, they go to a river called Nachal Eitan, with a calf that's unable to bear children. They kill the calf and they say, Yadenu lo shafcha et hadam hazeh. We did not spill this man's blood. They have to bring an atonement for this man's body. The Midrash on the subject of Egla Arufa says, Mipnei ma amra Torah tavi egla banachal. Why does the Torah command us to bring this calf to Nachal Eitan? Nachal Eitan was a stony ground. Why does it have to be a stony ground? And the Gemara answers something amazing. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Yavo davar shelo oseh perot, a creature that hasn't yet bore fruit, which is the calf, will be brought. Veyarev bimkom she'en oseh perot, and he'll be killed in a place that's unable to bear fruit, that's the stony ground. Veyechaper al mi shelo henicho la'asot perot, and this will be done to atone for he who was deprived the ability to become fruitful. That's the dead man. The Gemara asks, look at the Lashon. The calf hasn't yet bore fruit. the stony ground doesn't bear fruit, and the man can no longer bear fruit. The Gemara asks, what fruit is Hashem referring to? Why the lashon of perot, fruit? The Gemara answers, the fruits are mitzvot. Listen to this. In other words, the entire atonement of Eglah Arufa sends us a powerful message that this man's life was taken away from him. And what does it mean that life was taken away from him? What? That he can't dance anymore at the parties? That he can't sing anymore? That he can't exercise anymore and go to the gym? That he can't go shopping at the mall? No, says the Gemara. You took away life. You took away Chaim. What's Chaim? Mitzvot. If you took a person's life away, then we took away his duty to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what life is all about. Therefore, Hashem says, take a fruitless animal to a fruitless place to atone for someone who now became fruitless himself. So Yosef's message to his father was, Abba, I remember the subject of the Eglah Arufa. I know what life is. I know that if I'm simply going to tell you that I'm alive, that's not an indication of anything in your eyes. But the last thing you taught me was the Eglah Arufa. You taught me that life means Torah and mitzvot, and anything else is not real living. Ze lo chaim. So when Yaakov realizes that Yosef remembered what life really is, that the message wasn't about his good memory, but rather the depth of what he learned and what he remembered. So Yaakov realized, Od Yosef beni chai. He's still alive spiritually. Perhaps now, I'm going to end with this, we can understand another part of our parasha. In the beginning of the parasha, when Yosef is alone with his brothers, he reveals himself and he says, Ani Yosef, ha'od avi chai. I am Yosef. Is my father still alive? Now, we just learned that chai refers to a spiritual aliveness, right? So is Yosef asking his brothers if his father's spiritual well-being is still intact? Is he asking, is my father still shomer Torah or mitzvot? Because we said chai means spiritually living. So what does that mean? Ha'od avi chai? What is Yosef really asking? The Bet HaLevi Alav Shalom says that Yosef was actually rebuking his brothers. He knew Yaakov is alive because Yehuda just gave him a whole speech about the fact that if they don't bring back Benjamin, what's going to happen to Yaakov? He's going to die. So what's this question? Ha'od avi chai? He knew that his father was still alive. But what he was telling the brothers was the following. You keep talking to me about your father, your poor, poor father, how pained and weak he is, and how you can't go back without Benjamin because he's not going to be able to handle it, because he's going to die. You keep telling me to have mercy on your father. But Ani Yosef, I am Yosef, the one you sold 22 years ago. Is my father still alive after what you did to him? All of a sudden you care about your father? Did you care about your father and his feelings all those years ago when you sold me? Did you have mercy on him back then? Oh, what a rebuke this was. He lays into them quite harshly with these words, because this wasn't a social comment on Yosef's part. This was musar sheba musarim. But based on what we've been learning today, we could add the following. The Rambam, Alav Shalom, informs us of the particular conditions in which a person could receive nevuah. One of the conditions is that you cannot have a Yetzer Hara. So you can understand from that, that's why there weren't too many Nevi'im in a period of time. One here, one there, sprinkled here, sprinkled there. You can't have a Yetzer Hara. Another prerequisite for Nevu'ah is that you have to be besimcha. That's interesting. Of course, simcha doesn't mean that you walk the streets like Bozo the Clown, as you know. Simcha comes from within. It has to be part of your being. If a Navi is not besimcha, he cannot receive the spiritual transmission. Ladies, the Midrash tells us that Yaakov Avinu was not zoicha to a single nevuah for 22 years. Why? Because he was depressed about Yosef. Do you know what it's like for a tzaddik to be deprived of direct communication from Hashem? It's a terrible pain that could potentially stunt the tzaddik. So Yosef rebukes his brothers and he says, Ani Yosef, I'm Yosef, the one that you sold 22 years ago, and as a result of that, you put our father in a state of deep depression. Ha'od avi chai? Is he still spiritually alive after that? Because you took away his nevuah for 22 years. How dare you do such a thing? Ha'od avi chai? Because for my father, not to receive that spiritual transmission is like death itself. What a musar askel this was. The brothers couldn't answer him after that. The pasuk says, "Velo yachlu la'anot oto ki nivhalu mipanav." They got scared. But what I want you to know, ladies, is that the Zohar HaKadosh comments on Yosef HaTzadik. Malka, you got to listen to this because your baby is called Yosef. The Zohar HaKadosh comments on Yosef HaTzadik and says that if there could be a fourth Av from the Avot HaKadoshim, the closest candidate would be Yosef HaTzadik. You hear this? He would have been next in line to receive the distinguished position of being one of the Avot. And Chachamim prove it by telling us that the Avot HaKadoshim received the most parshiot in Sefer Bereshit. There's a lot of ink devoted to the stories of the Avot HaKadoshim. And Yosef HaTzadik has also as many parshiot dedicated to his life and his story as much as the Avot. 4 parshiot. That's an incredible thing. Chachamim say from here we see that Yosef is at a very high spiritual level. He chose a good name. And that maybe explains how he was able to withstand the impurity of Egypt all those years. Because he came closest to being an Av without being an Av. So the chidush here, ladies, it's not that he was able to maintain his spirituality, because you could say, well, he spent 17 years with his father, Yaakov, so that must have helped his neshama. And while that's true, the proof of his greatness lies in his children Ephraim and Menashe, who were never exposed to Yaakov Avinu, their grandfather, and yet they still came out tzaddikim. And they weren't regular tzaddikim. They merited to be included in the Shevatim. That means that Yosef's level, while he was in Egypt, was so great that he's able to produce righteous children like Menashe and Ephraim from his own home. That's the level of Yosef HaTzadik. Think about it. To be the only positive influence in your children's life when everyone else around them is living an impure life is very difficult to achieve. Look at this generation. And think about this generation. We're not even living in a Mitzrayim, really. There's Jews around you. But think about Yosef manages to teach his children how to become separate taught them that being separate means you're a human being and not an animal. You gotta be ruchani. In a place where there is no ruchaniyut. Zero. In a place that's a decadent society. In a place that's devoid of any spirituality whatsoever. In a place where you're walking down the street and it's like Oveh avodah zara al yamin ve'al smol. Chachamim tell us that there are people who are biologically alive, but they're spiritually dead. That's not chaim. They might be alive, but they're not chai. So one of our missions in life, says Rav Breuer, and this is the blockbuster chidush, is that you have to add years to your chaim. What kind of years? You have to add years filled with Torah and mitzvot, years filled with tahara and kedusha, years filled with closeness to Hashem, with a fervor for Judaism, years that are filled with true life, true chaim. That's what Yaakov Avinu couldn't wait to see when he offered to go down to Egypt and see Yosef. And when he sees Yosef, what does he say? It says, Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef, Amuta hapa'am. I feel like I'm going to die now. Achere oti et panecha, ki odecha chai. Now that I saw your face and know you're truly alive. Why does he say these words? Obviously, if he sees him, he's alive. No, but you're really alive. Yaakov was saying, really, I don't even have to see your face. It's enough the message you sent me with the Hagalot. But I had to see with my own eyes that you're still high, because that is indeed a chidush for me. The fact that you maintain such a high level of spirituality and you rose to a level like the Avot, despite being in such a decadent society, that to me is astonishing. And even more amazing is the fact that you brought 2 children into the world who are going to be included in the Shevatim, and you did it all by yourself. That is wondrous. That's a message to us all. You know what the message is. I don't have to get into details, right? If Yosef, in a lowly place like Mitzrayim, managed with zero help, again, think about it. It's not like he had parents that he went to every Chag and every Shabbat. It's not like he had any moral, spiritual support, somebody patting him on the back and telling him. Osnat, who was his wife, also grew up in the Egyptian society, even though she was the daughter of Dinah and Shechem, but still at the end of the day, she grew up in the house of Potiphar. He didn't really have much positive spiritual influence. All those 2 boys saw was Yosef. He was the only role model amid this enormous empire of avodah zarah and perversion, and yet he manages to instill in these 2 children righteousness and kedusha. If he managed to do that in such a place, we can't manage it to do it here in New Jersey, in Teaneck. We can't manage to do it in Bar Park, in Williamsburg, in Muncie, in Eretz Yisrael. We have no excuse. We don't have an excuse. Yehi ratzon that the same should be said on us that was said on Yosef. That in Shamayim we should be considered odecha chai, still spiritually alive despite the challenges of this galut. May the pasuk be fulfilled on us in this generation. Ve'atem hadvekim ba'Hashem Elokechem chayim kulchem hayom. Amen ken, yehi ratzon.